Hi everyone, Nathan here from Mighty Lancer Games, and today we've got a simple guide to how to paint a skeleton. So this is a Reaper Bones skeleton, 77242. It comes as a pack of 3, so I'm going to paint all 3 as we go, and these are the core paints that we're going to use. So we're going to paint 3 skeletons as we move along, so I'm going to paint 1 skeleton at each stage, and then I'm going to pause the video while I do the others, and then we'll show you them all at the end. So we start off with the bone shadow, a little bit on the wet palette there. We're going to use a Green Stuff World size 3 large synthetic brush, and we're just going to paint that all over the bone parts of the skeleton. So I've glued these guys onto some Rubicon 25mm round bases because I want to build a little bit of texture material up on the base, and I like these bases. They've got a nice lip that you can see at the bottom there, because you can fill the material in around the existing bottom of the Reaper Bones figures, and then make them all look consistent. So we're just going to paint that bone shadow all over the bone parts. And I've not primed this model, that's important as well to mention. So giving it a good wash out the packet with a bit of warm soapy water and a toothbrush just to make sure we've got all the residue off there, and then just painting straight onto the model without priming. So using the wet palette, you're getting a thin coat of paint on. There he is, all about done. And this bone shadow is a nice dark bone colour, but it does dry okay. And if you really wanted to, you could just leave it there. Okay, then we're going to go with Aged Bone, which is another one of the Reaper paints. And a little bit of that onto the wet palette. And then, I'm going to show you in a second, I'm going to show you a dry brush. So we're going to use a Citadel small dry brush. And we're going to get most of that off, and then we're just going to lightly brush that all over those bone parts of the figure. Make sure you go across the detail, so like up and down on the rib cage and the head, and across the arms and the legs, just so you get the raised parts of the detail. There we are, looking great. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to use some Reaper Cpr Wash. So this is just to, we're going to use that size 3 brush again. This is just add a little bit of water to it. This is just to darken down some of the areas. So I'm just going to apply that all over the figure. Make it look a little dirtier. Okay, there we go. And again, once that's dry, I'll just take off a bit of the heavier pooling. Spread it out a bit. Then what we're going to do is we're going to get some gunmetal army painter paint and a size 1 brush. Now you can't put the metallic paints on the wet palette, so we're just going to squidge that onto our old paint palette there, and we're just going to paint the sword and the rim of the shield. So just a thin coat again, straight onto the miniature without it being primed. And you can see now the wash is drying on the thing. You can see the detail really pops on the skeleton. So we're just going to paint the rim of that shield. Must knock the camera there. Ignore that. There's a couple of tiny little buckles on that side of the shield, so I'm just going to blob them on. That's great. Touch upon the sword. Super. Okay, then we're going to get some russet brown, and this is going to be for the wood parts of the shield. We're also going to paint the grip of the sword with that. So tiny little bit. We've got our size 1 brush again. A little bit of that on the palette, and then we're just going to paint the inside of the shield and the outside of the shield and that little part of the exposed sword handle that you can see. So just a couple of thin coats on most of the areas there. Again, straight onto the bare plastic, perfectly fine. Reaper paints are formulated in such a way that they cover over the bones beautifully. Just painting the woodwork on the front of the shield. So then we go back to that aged bone again, and we're just going to paint in the straps on the shield. So polished bone as a highlight. This is the third part of like the bones triad. Little blockage there, so we just have to undo that. So polished bone. I'm just going to get a little bit of polished bone. Get our dry brush again. Bring it off with the tissue, here we go. And again, just a little dry brush just on the very raised areas. There we go. Super. Very scary. Okay, we're going to take some Reaper Driftwood Brown, and this is going to be just to highlight the woodwork on the shield. Okay, so again, tiny little bit on the dry brush. And just brush across the planking on the shield. And a little bit on the inside. Not as much detail on the inside of the shield, so don't have to worry too much about that. I'm just going to take our little detail brush and we're just going to put a couple of horizontal marks across the inside of the shield, just create a little bit of detail ourselves. You don't have to do this, it's just I'm trying to be a little bit fancy. Okay, I decided I was going to take some Citadel dry riser rust. I wanted to make the metal look like it had just been brought out of the crypt with the skeleton. So we're just going to put this all over the sword and the rim of the shield. It's really designed for dry brushing on, is this pen, so it's quite hard to manipulate with a small brush. If you look when I move my fingers out of the way, you can see how thick it is in the pot. It's really quite blobby. Okay, so there we go, nice bright orange rust on the sword. We're going to add a little step to that after. A little bit around the edge of the shield. Just to make it look as if this guy hasn't stepped fresh out of the armory. A little bit on those buckles on the inside of the shield. There we go. Great. So, you could call him done there, but we're going to go just a little bit further. So we're going to get a little bit more of our gunmetal, and we're just going to dry brush that over the top of that orange, just to make it look as if some of the edges of the weapon have scrubbed the rust off because they've been used recently. And the same with the shield, it's seen a little bit of activity, so it's still got a bit of rust on, but not a huge amount. Weathering metal is quite difficult, so you're best off looking at realistic effects, looking at existing photographs of rusty material and what have you, just to see where the rust would accumulate in the joints and what have you. Okay, he's looking quite good, quite pleased with that. Next we're going to take a little bit of linen white. I'm just going to highlight up those straps on the shield. Fab. Okay, next we're going to take some Astro Granite Debris, which is a Citadel texture paint. So you can see how thick that is, and we use the spatula end of the basing material tool. And then just liberally apply that. So the reason I like these bases, like I said, they've got this rim around the outside, and so you can just squidge that material in between the rim and the moulded base on the bottom of the figure. Beautiful. So as this stuff dries, you can manipulate it a bit with either the brush or the end of the tool or a sculpting tool or whatever, create lumps and different effects. So while that's drying, I just decided that I was going to make a tiny little bit more of a highlight on his sword. So I've got some Vallejo Game Colour Silver, and we're just going to dry brush that onto the very extremities of the weapon. I was in two minds about whether to put some blood effect on it as well to make it look as if he's recently been hacking up some of the living, but I decided against that. Just thought we'd just go with a little bit of weathering instead. Great. Okay, so next our basing material is dry, but obviously I have still got the moulded base on the bottom of the figure. So we're going to get some Reaper Stone Grey, and we're going to paint that using our size 3 brush. We're going to paint that all over the whole top of the base, around his feet, over the moulded base and over the top of the Astro Granite debris that we used to fill in the rest of the base. So again, we're using it on the wet palette, and we're going to put 2 coats of this paint on, just because we want a nice even coverage. And obviously the bones base is plain white, the Astro Granite debris is quite a dark grey, so just the second coat needed just to make it all match, tie in together. We get the second coat. You can see the other skeletons in the top of the picture there. One thing worth noting is the painting handles that we're using here don't hold the Rubicon bases particularly well because of the shape, so these are stuck on the top with a bit of glue tack. So next we're going to take some Reaper Stone Wash, and we're just going to apply that over the top of all the base, so it shades all the little recesses and what have you for us. Being really careful not to paint the feet of the skeleton after all our hard dry brushing effort. Okay, that's dry. So then we'll go back to our stone grey. We're going to get a little bit of that with the dry brush. And then we're going to dry brush that all over the top of the area that we just washed. So a little light dry brush just brings out the edges of the little rock that the skeleton stood on, and the lumps and bumps in the Astro Granite debris that we applied around the base. Then we're going to do the same again with some Reaper Weathered Stone, which is a lot lighter grey. So a little bit of that, weathered grey. Again, dry brush, or skanky old tissue. Super. Okay, final step. We're going to use some Citadel Abaddon Black just to paint the rim of the base. So you can see the edge of the base quite nicely defined because of that lip again. So your basic material fills in the middle, and then you just paint it. You know, one go round with this Abaddon Black should really be enough. Straight out of the bottle. A little bit on the fluff on the edge of the shield, and there we go, the finished miniature. So I've used a couple of tufts on the base there, and the orangey bit on the base is some Army Painter wet mud that I put in just on the thing. So that's all 3 skeletons, different poses, and there they are. There's the crew coming to get you. So hope that was helpful. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe to our YouTube channel, and have a great day.